Thanks for joining us. Selamat Hari Raya Aidilfitri, Minal Aidil wal Faizin, Eid Mubarak to everyone that is celebrating. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This is a pre-recorded interview that we did last week at my office. In the studio with me is Jameel Ahmad, the Chief Analyst at Online Trading Brokerage GTC. Jameel, thanks very much for coming over to KL. And if people missed out our conversation last week, I think I want to make a big disclaimer. Jameel is a long-time friend of mine.
Likewise.
Yeah, and how have things been, my friend? I mean, other than getting a job at GTC and the like, and me ending up in the Ministry of Economy. But one thing that I am actually quite interested to talk about is actually Adolescence, the movie by Netflix. Have you seen that one?
No.
It's a really scary movie, TV. It's 4 episodes. It's based in the UK. It's about, the story is a very simple one. A 13-year-old stabs another 13-year-old. You see that and you read that in the UK, but of course it happens elsewhere. The issue here is on how the youth and the social media impacts how we think. Mental health is a big topic, at least in Malaysia. I don't know if it is
universal.
Yeah, and in the realm of medical science, there's 2 things that they like to talk about: incidences and prevalence. Initially, when they talk about mental health issues as a rise of incidences, initially people thought that because that's why there are more psychiatrists, psychologists, there are more therapists out there, so it's a lot more easier for them to identify among the population. But now there's an issue of not just the incidences are rising, the prevalence of it is also rising. So people are really truly impacted by I guess the rise of social media and technology and how this impacts everyone. And of course, you travel the world, you see a few markets, you see how people invest, the global economy is taking shape. Yeah. And of course, I don't think we ever recovered from COVID.
Agreed.
We've discussed this in the last episode.
Agreed.
But yeah, how are things shaping up, especially when you view the different markets that you operate in? Because investors are people after all.
Absolutely.
Your customers, the GTC customers,
absolutely,
are people after all, and they're emotive, I suppose. But they're also cautious, a bit brave at sometimes, but at the same time, do they take unnecessary risks when it comes to investing? Is this reflective of how they carry themselves in real life? How do you see the world changing since the last time I met you?
This is such a broad question that I think we're going to have an own episode on this, but I'm more than happy to talk about something that I'm prepared to talk about. Mental health is so important. And it's not just in Malaysia that we're talking about this, and I'm happy to be Jameel, the person here. Not the international spokesperson, the analyst or anything. I'm more than happy to
we did that in the previous episode.
Yes, exactly. I'm more than happy just to break it down.
Yeah.
I think that this generation that's coming up now has a lot of challenges. And they also need support and guidance, which is why I'm really happy to hear about your other responsibilities that you're taking to help provide access to education and so forth. Because again, if we're talking about financial markets, I said in the previous episode, learning never stops. Even as somebody who's been in this field now for 20 years, always there's change in the world. There's always opportunities to learn and do something, or just the environment's different. Short-termism is a big challenge for the emerging generation now, Generation Z, I would say even millennials, because we had this rise of social media, technology advances, accessibility to information and so forth, where things have been consumed in a way that everything's easy and it's achievable. Everything's within grasp. If you want to get a new iPhone, you get your new iPhone. This patience that I think some of the older millennials were used to from the previous generation is not something that exists as parallel now to the youth that are coming up. And I'm not criticizing the youth. That's because of how we consume information, where social media makes everything easy, you make new friends or so-called friends and so forth. In terms of bridging this back towards financial markets, there's 2 different terms here. There's trading and there's investing. Trading is a skill that needs to be developed, We can talk about being a suffering Manchester United fan, a recently
A
suffering
Manchester United
Chelsea fan, although Chelsea are doing somewhat
yeah,
better now.
somewhat better.
Somewhat better now.
And
There's always time.
we're in the most competitive league right now. It's called the Europa Conference League. And we're doing fairly well there. So I got that going for me.
It's a trophy, my friend.
But a UEFA trophy at that, yeah.
Yes, and from somebody who's going to get knocked out in the Europa League anytime soon, I would take the Conference League. Back to the more serious topic of investing. Again, you are in a sensationalist world now where everything's so clickbait and it's so easy. Let's just believe that Bitcoin's going to hit 100,000. Okay, it hit 100,000. But the trend was not just like this. And I think the youth now are at a big risk where headlines are so easy to believe. It's so sensationalist. For every time Bitcoin looked like it was going to move towards 100,000, and it did double in price between the presidential elections towards late January, I think it was, there was also a number of dips. Gold hit 3,000 for the first time ever late last week. But we had a number of bounces lower before we got to 3,000.
Yeah.
You never say never to anything in financial markets.
Yeah.
Okay? No 2 days are ever the same.
Yeah.
My role is always to provide and share knowledge and to help invest in client education, because as somebody who now has been in this field for nearly 20 years, I'm telling you, I'm still learning.
It's not just that. Masculinity is an issue right now. How do we differentiate people who are investing versus just addicted to gambling, and we mask it as investing, especially young men? Do you see that as an issue in your line of work, where people think that they're investing, but actually they're just making bets and getting a dopamine hit every time their bet hits the mark, and they just slump? If they miss the mark. Is there any correlation, at least in your view, in terms of how young men view investing? Are they truly investing in the truest sense of the word, or are they just, it's another way of just going to the casino?
I can understand why it's been labeled that way,
Yeah.
but where I'm sitting, the jurisdiction down in the UAE and the Middle East, the connotation is not quite there. In terms of trading being a masculine, or investing being a masculine field, interesting thing is I can tell you, when I'm delivering seminars, such as this time last week, I delivered a seminar in front of 400 people in Hong Kong, giving global market analysis. I can tell you that more than half of the people in the room were female.
Oh.
So I still see this as an emerging field which needs more, I would say, research behind it. But I agree with you, in certain jurisdictions, investments, finance, trading, maybe the association with gambling and betting and so forth, male-driven and male-dominant. And I can understand why the similarities are. But there shouldn't be, because investing is not a bet. And that's where we have to associate between investing and trading.
Yes, of course.
If you're going to just speculate, again, and I use the Bitcoin metaphor again, if you're just going to bet on Bitcoin being 100,000 and just going like this in a straight line, then unfortunately, if it sounds too good to be true, it generally is in life.
It is.
And this is where those connotations with, whether we call it masculinity or potential gambling, or just basically being naive. Unfortunately, that's also a case of that.
Well, the word I would use is greedy, unfortunately. Naivete is, you got to take actions. You got to take responsibility for your own actions.
That's
unfortunately.
I agree.
And then, of course, so now you're in Dubai. So how have you been? Because the last time I checked, you were in the UK. You were from Cyprus. You were living in Cyprus. You're in the UK. And then how has it been? How long have you been in Dubai?
I've been in the UAE now for just over 2 years. I'm so thankful to GTC, the brand I represent, for giving me the opportunity to come out of the UK. Because the funny thing is with me, and not many know that about my career story, is I left the UK as soon as I did my undergraduate degree because I didn't see opportunities. The graduate financial crisis in the UK was particularly poor in terms of scope for work and opportunities. So
what about the minority element, the Muslim element? Does that help in this story? Being in the UK?
I've always tried to be the best version of myself, regardless of background and regardless of any potential challenges ahead. Yes, there's still underrepresentation in sectors. And maybe in my sector as well, as a financial market board spokesperson and so forth, perhaps I'm not, perhaps I am a minority in terms of having a British Pakistani background, Muslim name and so forth. But quite frankly, I sit in the chair and believe I'm the best person in the chair, whether I was Caucasian, mixed race, any background. I don't differentiate in that sense of the world. But I can see why in some sectors, we're still underrepresentation, whether you're female, from any ethnic background, your view on certain aspects of life and so forth. But I try not to eat into such data, be the best version of yourself. In terms of my career story, I graduated 2012. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to represent the UK at a leadership and cultural training program in the US. I was there for just over 2 months. And during that program, I made a contact with somebody in Singapore who was setting up a brokerage in Cyprus. 1 year after I went to Cyprus, I ended up staying there for nearly 7 years. And the funny thing is, and this is again something I would really love to teach the youth as something that I needed to do. When I moved to Cyprus, I was earning less money than somebody who was doing non-graduate work in the UK. Fact. But to get ahead, sometimes you have to get away. And that experience I picked up then in my early 20s was still more substantial than my peers and my friends were picking up in their early 30s in the UK. So that helped me in my own learning tremendously. And I'm so thankful for those times which I might have thought that were hard. And from Cyprus, I stayed there for 7 years. Lucky enough to travel the world, meet amazing media houses, institutions, corporate clients, and have these opportunities to have conversations with people I would not have had if I didn't take those short-term potential risks. But you can do that because you always learn. And that's advice I'd give to anyone. If you want to get ahead, get away from your comfort zone. Push yourself. Be brave. And it's okay to make a mistake, but learn from that mistake, because ultimately there's 2 C's in your corporate life: consistency and complacency. Never be complacent, because somebody else is going to go above you. If you can consistently look at yourself and think, I'm trying my best, nobody can ask for more, and you can ask for more of yourself. And I think that also reads into the mental health aspect.
So how do you keep yourself grounded? Sorry, I'm using a code word, sane.
In this financial market environment of Trumpism.
Grounded. How do you keep yourself grounded? No, but basically it's an insane time to be in, to be frank. Not in the clinical term sense, but you know, everything's everywhere right now. We use the term everything's up in the air in the previous episode. But yeah, so how do you keep yourself grounded? What's your true north? How do you keep a true north?
It's hard to switch off. As you mentioned, things are definitely up in the air. It's wacky times in the world. That impacts my day-to-day job. But I try to be the best version of myself.
Do you turn to spiritual? Is that helping, or that?
Somewhat. Again, I believe this is the holy month of Ramadan. Nothing's put in front of us that we can't handle. I believe in that train of thought. I stay grounded by being me. At the end of the day, again, Jameel is a person. The glitz and glamour of appearing on all these different multinational worldwide news networks, whether I'm lucky enough to be on the Astro AWANI network, the BBC, Al Jazeera's, the global names and so forth, number one goal, and I would say this on air, no issue at all, is to make my parents happy for me. Because you're talking about some aspects of this world being underrepresented. I can tell you for a fact, my father's an immigrant from Pakistan. Neither my mum or dad had access to higher education. My father was a taxi driver. My mum worked on petrol stations. She was a teaching assistant for special needs children. My parents did everything possible and everything they could to provide their children with more opportunities. even though those opportunities weren't clear at that time.
Yeah.
And that hard work, that determination, those ethics, those integrity were instilled in us and were far more valuable than any flashy gadget any kid on the street might have. I have ethics, I'm a brand. And I have integrity in my heart. And if I keep to those principles, I will be thankful for any success that I have. And I'm so thankful, really. But that's what keeps me grounded.
In this show, in the latest form of this, because Notepad was such a success, but I had to leave that for this. I had a clinical psychologist over, sitting in your chair, and I asked the same question to this clinical psychologist, and the psychologist said, normally what we do in my line of work, or in his line of work, he said, if you leave today, right, if you leave the world today, what would be something of you that you want to continue on? That is mostly on the individual to answer. So for me, I answered that hypothetical question by saying my children. I do everything for my kids. You do this for your parents. But basically that true north is always in the service of others. It's never about, you know, I want to be the greatest person alive and then that's it.
Yeah.
So do you feel that kind of thinking is also important into how you bring your professional life, day-to-day kind of thing?
It's vital because, again, Jameel Ahmad, the person,
and
Jameel Ahmad, the spokesperson, and so forth, they're somewhat interconnected in some ways. But should tragedies unfortunately strike, and should my time be no longer ticking, to use that unfortunate metaphor, I would like for Ibrahim as the person, if he was asked, how was Jameel? What was he really like? That's my legacy. That's how I'm going to continue living, even if I'm not living. And that's the same for any market or person I meet, whether it's your cameraman, the security at the front door, the Grab driver who got me here. What was he like as a person? What impression did he leave? That's my legacy.
Let's talk about investor awareness. I doubt that, at least in Malaysia, people are still unfamiliar with online trading brokerages like GTC or many others. But I'm sure there's always room to grow in terms of how we improve our understanding of how it works. There's also AI, and I'm pretty sure you can, you know, we need 3 more episodes for if I want to ask you about AI and how it impacts your line of work. There's also the whole element of, are people shying away? How do people diversify their portfolio? And then, of course, cash on hand. I doubt that there's much cash on hand these days for investors. Normally, you know, it's always about putting food on the table, and do they have enough even for that? So how do you view these kind of, I guess, macro changes that are currently happening? How does AI impact you? Do people have enough to invest in? And basically, do you think that the whole notion of, say, for instance, for me, I don't partake in active trading at all, or active investing at all. I put it in a very safe, slow burn kind of situation with in dollar average returns. I take away some of my income and put it there, and I don't want to think about it. And I do think about it like in December, and I just check the statement, and that's about it.
When you need to buy Christmas presents, right?
Christmas presents, and my children, their birthdays are very close. Around you know, January, February as well. But yeah, how are things now changing compared to how you first started off?
Firstly, I wish your children the most amazing future.
Thank you very much.
In terms of how things are changing, it's a good question, because I would say how you described your own investing mindset, steady wins the race. Again, when we talk about the mental health aspect and how the world now is so fast moving and changing, less is sometimes more. And the approach you have, I would say that's more than adequate, because there's always an opportunity in financial markets, but that opportunity could be unsuccessful or successfully realized, depending on so many different factors. AI is definitely a game changer, like it is for all different industries and economies. Does it impact my line of work today so much? Not really. It's been a bit overshooted. But if we had this interview maybe 18 months to 2 years from now, I think my answer would change. In terms of mindsets towards investing, if you look at the growing client base, not just for the firm that I represent, but generally across the industry, it's actually retail investors. They're the growing market. So definitely more awareness is there, more appetite towards investing is there. But that's where my role becomes so important and influential, because this is not easy. Again, it's a skill. It's not a hobby. It's not a lottery ticket. You can't turn $2 to 200,000 US dollars, no matter whoever sells you that dream. You will literally be 1 in a million if you're able to achieve that, if not 1 in 10 million. So I think that's important.
But AI specific and how it is affecting everybody right now, does this bring about more harm to your career or better for your career?
I think personally it's going to be better, because if we're relying on technology to do the trading for us or to do different industry perspective for us, one thing technology cannot be yet, although it's making some room, is be human. To, in a human way, explain these very technical and complex topics to an audience, and I do my best, who will not understand it so much because of different levels of education, different levels of experience in investing, what is investing, the metaphors and so forth. But yeah, the chat GPTs and so forth, they're definitely changing the game, like they're changing so many different industry games too. But in terms of being an analyst and a spokesperson, it's not there yet. I hope for your sake, I won't be cloned, because I think you'll have a big headache. Also, I won't be able to come to this amazing market so much. But yeah, I see the room for concerns, but I also see the room for opportunities. And if the right people are involved in this technology and they're using it for greater good, for medicine and for end some very unfortunate human suffering and so forth, then yes, there's so much opportunity there. But if it's used to make the rich richer, which unfortunately there's always scope for that, because it is the rich that benefit from any crisis, from any changes. Exactly, agreed. Then that's where there's area for concern. But if technology is used for greater good, incredible.
Tell me more about GTC, especially for audiences that might not be familiar with your brokerage.
Yeah, so global online brokerage. We have clients from more than 100 different countries. We're globally regulated in many different jurisdictions, whether it's the United Kingdom, the UAE, where I'm sitting, South Africa, Australia. Certainly a global powerhouse in the industry that's emerging. I'm very thankful to be with them, for them to trust me, because the core messages and the values of this company to share knowledge, investing in client education, they're completely in parallel with how I am as a person and how I view this industry. And I would say the same thing I said on the previous episode. No matter how many glitz and glamour there is from the travel, or supposed glitz and glamour, because it's actually very tiring, from the travel, from getting to meet the different media houses, the global publications and so forth, the number one thing that always gets me excited, enthusiastic and so forth, is speaking to everyday audience. That's where I get the most enjoyment and fulfillment out of my career path. And at the moment, I don't have that, I stop.
Finally, talk to me more about Manchester United. Why are they... apparently Old Trafford is moving up, right?
Where are they? I mean, how low is this floor right now? These are really...
I think that's the toughest, right? But just like, just like everything else, it's about long-term investing, so...
Oh, look, if we're talking about investing metaphors, we've been taking profit on Manchester United for a long time. There's been a huge correction on the Manchester United brand. I'm not happy about leaving Old Trafford. I hate that idea.
Really? Are you from Manchester, by any chance?
No, but when you go to Old Trafford, you feel that history in the air, whether you are a Manchester United fan or not. You love this feeling of Manchester United in the history. But the Glazers have been awful. They've been awful. And Radcliffe has definitely not been what we
Yeah.
hoped he would be.
Yeah.
But we have to be objective that he's inheriting a bad situation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that certain decisions are popular, like the cancelling of staff lunches, the limited budgets now for the Man United charities and so forth.
Yeah.
What got me into Manchester United in the first point was not the success. I was a young kid who watched the Bobby Charlton movie about the Munich air disaster, the Busby Babes and so forth.
Yeah.
That's what hit my heart. That's what got me into Manchester United, and that's what keeps me at Man United. However, slowly, the club, the brand is losing those values, and that's the scary thing as a United fan. And in terms of what's next, you look at where we are on the table, and
I don't even know. Is it the bottom half still?
well into the bottom half. I think we are now the bottom 6, which is better than the bottom 4. But who would have seen that coming?
I supported Chelsea when I was a young boy, and Chelsea was relegated from the Premier League. Think about that. Yeah. So and then, of course, the shot in the arm was Abramovich came about, and that was fun because as a young lad, it was always interesting to see the club, win everything, and now we're there. I don't know, So money and football is also quite intrinsically a debatable moment, but Malaysia is also, we're seeing a little bit of that with the one club having over hundreds of millions of ringgit being poured in.
Oh.
Yeah, but just one club. It does fairly well in the ASEAN Super League, but that's about it.
There's a football league here? I didn't know. I'm
come on.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
No, in terms of the Chelsea story, Chelsea was the story of a club that did it right.
Yeah.
You look at the youth that came up, you look at how Chelsea was able to identify and really progress.
Yeah.
Chelsea was done the right way.
Yeah.
If you look at Man City, can you really say that?
No.
Exactly.
I can say Liverpool does it that way.
Liverpool deserve what they succeed, and that comes from. That's very hard to say.
No. I mean, if you're a Premier League supporter, you would just look at Liverpool and you would just say, they did it right.
Even Arsenal now are back where they deserve to be as a legacy club. In terms of that was just a joke about the Malaysian Football League.
It's fine. It's fine. Tottenham is still Tottenham.
There's a trophy.
I have a lot more trophies than Tottenham.
Is there a trophy cabinet? Is it dusty?
So how are you celebrating your Eid?
I hope to maybe stay here for a few days, or I would either go back to the Middle East, or I might try and go to a neighboring country. But the month has gone very fast. I think the traveling eats into it.
Yeah.
But Ramadan Mubarak to everybody, and Eid Mubarak to everyone, whether you're celebrating or not.
Yeah.
I think there's room for unity, and there's a lot more global understanding now between and about different national and ethnic holidays. Again, as somebody who's lived in the Middle East, in the UAE, I really want you to visit us sometime, by the way. I think we should arrange that.
I will.
But you're seeing so much cultural awareness of different religious holidays, no matter which religion you're following. So I think there's definitely some progress made in the global world in terms of being more globally aware of different cultures.
Yeah.
And we should.
I think there was an iftar session at Windsor Castle.
Yes, correct. I was actually in the UK visiting my parents that week. That was the first week of Ramadan. Again, yes, we have many challenges in the world. We still have a lot of stereotypes and so forth. But I think there's more awareness about different beliefs and different theories and values of life.
Final question before we conclude the show. Are you more optimistic or are you more cautious about the next 12 months? As a person, as an investor, as Jameel?
Cautious across all of the different streams, because if we go back to the tariffs, okay?
Yeah.
We're having recession forecasts that are really coming out of the woodwork, and they're fiery. But we also have a world economy that's not yet contracting. Global trade is so important to the world economy. We saw a snapshot towards what happens when global trade stops with COVID. Let's just hope this US administration are negotiating, they're making deals, and they're pursuing their own campaign pledges, nationalist agenda, however we're going to phase it. rather than going to be the ones that are really going to push this world economy into another dark space, because there's a risk of that, and unfortunately I do need to end that on that sour note.
Eid Mubarak, Selamat Hari Raya, Idul Fitri, but that's Jameel Ahmad for you. I wish I can get you in quite often.
Yes.
I have Dubai on the cards for me during the Idul Adha period, 2-3 months from now. So I'll probably bring one of the cameramen as well over.
Come to our office, all most welcome.
There you go. If you've missed any part of this show, just head on to astroawani.com, look for GTC, Jameel Ahmad, or The Economy, or even my name, Ibrahim Sani. Till then, Selamat Hari Raya Idul Fitri, maaf zahir dan batin.